My childhood was very interesting. I grew up with a family that was not just my parents, but an extended family. Growing up in Sri Lanka with an extended family, all living in the same house, I felt very privileged. So because I learned from so many different people. I went to school. I had a family that was instilling values in me that I didn't agree with, but I also, in reflecting back, I actually appreciate. And a lot of friends and that I grew up with as well, playing cricket and playing sports and watching TV for the first time when TV first came to the country. Those were some of the images and relationships that I nurtured, and growing up in family and friends that were coming from very different backgrounds, religious backgrounds, as well as socioeconomic backgrounds, also helped shape who I am today, which I didn't know of before.
In your community growing up, your parents?
My father, when he first met my mother, he was a Catholic priest. And my mother comes from a very staunch Buddhist background. And once they met, they were challenged because religion was hindering in their relationship. But the love they have for each other helped them keep a strong relationship. And 39 years later, they're still like two teenagers in love. I grew up primarily with a Buddhist background, but do not consider myself staunch Buddhist, but more spiritual. But I was also encouraged to go to church, go to the temple, go to the mosque because of my friends and family members. So I was exposed to a lot of those ideologies, those beliefs, those lifestyle choices growing up. And that helped me also see the world through a different lens. There are several things I would consider to be very significant events in my life. One significant thing was the privilege of being born to a family who was alive, and because Sri Lanka is also going through a conflict, but being brought into a family that had a large family and that instilled in me a lot of values that I still hold dear was something very significant. Some of them are being respectful to elders, being kind to people, being generous in service to people, were some of the values that I was brought up with. And looking back, certain things, so certain aspects of those I didn't like at the time because it was restricting my free thinking. But now when I think of those things, I am so glad that I was exposed to those, because a lot of who I am is because of those values. Going back to 1983, when in Sri Lanka, the war really started in 1983 in Colombo, in our own town where I was growing up. One afternoon in 1983, there was a lot of violence that broke out on the same streets that I grew up in, and I witnessed for the first time the real good and ugly side of human nature, seeing people butchering people to death, torturing people in front of my own eyes, really left a strong mark in me, and it helped shape who I am today also. And a lot of what I have studied was because of the 1983 incidents, seeing it affect me personally when seeing how my friends I grew up with, whose lives will never be the same since that day, have also helped put a really sour mark on me. But also looking back in that aspect, it also helped for me to look at conflict in a different way, human nature in a different way as well. So 1983 incident in Sri Lanka was a very distinction in my life. And look, going forward, since then, coming to the U.S. was again a turning point in my life. Coming here, I came because I was madly in love with somebody, but the reasons I stayed was very different from that. The reasons I stayed was because I got involved in civic activities, in student activism, starting at community college. I think that was a very significant turning point in my life also, because it showed that each individual can do a lot of different things in working in their communities. That helped me a lot in realizing my own potential, my own strengths, my own weaknesses. For the first time in my life, it showed me that. I also think a turning point, a significant moment, was going to Australia for the first time. This is before I came to the US. That was the first time I was alone, traveling abroad alone, being on my own, having responsibilities that I didn't have when I was in Sri Lanka. Was a very important element to me, because I was a very shy person. I was too shy to even walk up the street to buy a loaf of bread. But being in Australia, having responsibilities to do things on my own, opened that door a little to take risks that I couldn't have taken in Sri Lanka because of my large family who was taking care of me. Another very important time in my life was in the 1980s, when I didn't have any money at all, and I had applied to go to school. I had to show that I had enough money in the bank to get accepted, because I was considered an international student. And one of my good friends' family wrote me a check for $10,000 and gave it to me, saying, use this. And I felt very obligated. It's like I'd never seen anything over $100 at the time. And for $10,000 was a very large sum of money for me. And I felt I couldn't accept it. But what ended up being was I used it in my bank account and got accepted to the school, and I gave the money back to them. But what they told me was the only way you can pay us back is by being kind and helping somebody else when they are in need. That pay it forward concept really opened my eyes to this whole notion of people's generosity. I was seeing the opportunities in this country, but that was a moment in my life where I was able to see the generosity people have in this country and how generous they can be. Going through school and graduating from college, from community college to undergraduate, and then American University for my master's, also was significant moments in my life where I was able to feel like I achieved something academically. Having grown up with a family where all of my parents are both teachers, I felt like this is a way I can show them that I can accomplish something in the academic realm also. So for me, it was a personal accomplishment I had to overcome, but I took it on as a challenge where I could learn from it as well. Another significant moment in my life was in 2004 during the tsunami. When I was in Sri Lanka, I saw the tsunami firsthand, and I saw the good and ugly side and the nature can have on us. Before, in 1983, I saw the good and ugly side of human nature. But this time I saw the good and ugly side of the natural, how the nature can be kind to us as well as very violent against us. To see people kneeling on the beach and asking whoever they believe in why he or she could be so hurtful towards us. Taking away family members within moments' notice also was a very poignant moment in my life, because I felt like it gave me some of the skills and abilities to do something differently in Sri Lanka.